we must get started. So let's do it. Hi, everyone. My name is John Johnson. I'm the Professional Programs Manager at the University of Maryland. I work in the Project Management Center for Excellence, and I work with MTech and help to co-found the Masters in Product Management. We put on this three-part series as an opportunity to really dive deep into the product operating model, the science behind that operating model in terms of how to shift decision making in order to better manage risk. We talked about shifting left and shifting right. That was in the second webinar. Today, it is much more contemporary. We're talking about AI and how to harness AI in product operations. And so as we go through the presentation today, a lot of the content is fresh, but who knows? Pretty soon it may not be so fresh. We're going to talk about the major elements that you should keep in mind as we go forward, especially in these next 2 to 3 years. I think this is a pretty solid run of time. And we'll also dive into some examples that are relevant to you right now. So today's presentation is harnessing AI to transform product operations, accelerating innovation and insight. Our agenda is first, we're going to talk about how do you catch a wave? And by a wave, I mean a transformation wave that's coming into your industry that could potentially threaten your business, your product. We're going to learn some good lessons from Jeffrey Moore on how to do that. We're then going to get into product operations, and we're going to learn from Melissa Perry, and we're going to be going deep into what she's been focusing on what she's called Beyond the Build Trap, which we talked about in the last 2 sessions, and it's foundational, I think, to the new product management movement, the reinvention curve of product management as a function that does discovery, that helps to figure out the viability and the value risk. So we'll dive into how she organizes this, and I think she does a great job, and then how we can enhance it with AI. We're going to give a quick nod to Gen AI and agents. This is not a presentation that's going to go deep into that topic. What we're going to talk about are the ways in which you can leverage AI and what's available to you on more of a tooling level right now. But we are going to, I'm going to point you to a wonderful presentation done just recently by Andrew Ng. And he is a fantastic educator, obviously in the space. If you know who he is, he needs some introduction. And then we're going to come back and revisit the product operating model and look at it with fresh eyes in our final time together. So then let's talk about how do you catch a wave. Technology disruptions are really not new for us anymore. I mean, frankly, we've been disrupted quite a bit. I mean, cloud is arguably 2005 with AWS, mobile not much later with the iPhone, and social blew up right about the same time. Data science was, the hottest job in 2011. The Internet of Things has been around basically for a decade, but now we have artificial intelligence. And what we can see and why we call these potentially disruptive innovations is because they significantly reduce the cost of some important aspect. They reduce the cost of developing connections with social, of dynamic decision making with data science, of device optimization with Internet of Things, and now for generating detailed insights and performing complex tasks with artificial intelligence. And when it comes to thinking about how we respond, how we plan forward in terms of how companies should strategize about dealing with potential disruption and opportunities and investing in them, we think about it with the McKinsey 3 horizon model. And the first horizon is within the next year. This is your existing business, and companies do really well at planning and executing within a year in order to drive and achieve their performance goals, right? They do very well at achieving their intended revenues, return on assets, whatever measure is they're focused on, they do very well at this. Where companies get stuck is in the ability to break out new categories. These are wholly new problems to be solved. These are new business lines being solved in a new way. And that's because of the fact that this breakout category requires significant pain, which we're going to get into in a minute. But significant pain for the company to reorganize around new value and value chains. And then lastly, in Horizon 3, we're investing in the future technologies. Now, investing here is actually easy to do because the costs tend to be low, and we are essentially just developing our options. If you want to understand this from a couple of examples, one case is Apple. Their Horizon 1 is hardware, 2 is the app ecosystem, 3 is the Apple car, right? And I think they're shifting away from that now. Tesla was their Horizon 1 is the car truck. Horizon 2 is a self-driving platform, which is sticking. And then, of course, mobility as a service. So the key here is to understand these timelines and that Horizon 2 is where we find an issue. The reason why we find an issue with Horizon 2 is because there are significantly different sets of values that drive sustaining innovation versus disruptive innovation. Anything that's in sustaining innovation, and I'll orient you to this, anything that's on the right side of this chart where we are talking about either the performance zone, which is all about getting the top line done, hitting the goal, delivering on revenue, or managing the bottom line with the productivity zone, which makes everything work: effectiveness, efficiency, compliance. Think your HR, your legal, etc. These two groups that are doing your current business, they have a certain set of values, but one thing they value the most is being able to show a financial return for their efforts. And in the case of sustaining innovation, it's about being on budget and on time because they need to make their numbers. And in terms of, for the performance zone, for the productivity zone, it's all about doing it right and also doing it within budget. However, over here in the disruptive innovation area, your focus is actually on developing a new business. In the incubation zone in Horizon 3, investments are very small. And as a result, the budget doesn't really matter. What people are trying to figure out is how can we develop something that's worth deploying into one of the other zones. That matters. Getting it done in time matters. And failure here is actually rewarded. Failure in this area is punished. The tricky part is in Horizon 2, where you're trying to deliver on a new transformative part of the business that's got to reach a threshold that Jeffrey Moore establishes as being about 10% to say that you've got there in terms of your total portfolio of work. And that's tough because when you set up a whole new business, the intent is to get through essentially a very painful process of reorganizing the entire sets of values and how work is done so that everybody can deliver in a whole new way with a whole new set of value where value is created a whole new part of the business. And that's very hard to do. It usually, in almost all cases, is done by a very strong CEO. And so we can understand this a little bit better by understanding that when it comes to sustaining innovations, they work as effectively a funnel. Good ideas come in through the top, they're tested, they are continuously tested, hopefully very early, like we've talked about in our previous webinars. We test and we look for, will it fail? And if we can't prove that it will fail, we allow it to continue through until eventually it ends up into Horizon 1. So sustaining innovations have a very nice flow, and they net down to the point where we actually implement some promising new opportunity. Disruptive innovation gets pinched in the middle. And the reason why, again, is you have to change how you do business in order to serve either a lower end of the market or a brand new section of the market. Because that's the definition of disruptive innovation. And it's also the reason why these marginal costs are opening up new opportunities. But to do this, to catch the S curve of a new technology wave, you have to go through what's called a J curve. And the J curve is where, and this is very familiar to anybody who's been in a startup, you essentially go deep into debt, you take on lots of equity partners or you invest your own money if you're an existing company, and then you try to get out of the hole as quickly as possible and turn things around no later than like year 3. That's about how long you have until everybody gives up on you. Some would say you only have 18 months to go through it. But the J curve is going to be real because, again, it's going to take a long time to establish a new business, to build a new market, and to finally get all the systems running so that it works. And this is the reason why many established companies just don't do it. They don't do it. They don't want to do it. It's basically betting the farm, right? And some companies have successfully done it. Famously, Boeing did it. We also saw how, Apple did it. And there have been some major transformations that have been successful. Big Blue did it, IBM did it, but there's also been times where it either killed or maimed a really big company. And there are many companies that we no longer hear about anymore because they didn't make it through it. So the question is, what do you want to do? Are you ready to transform? Well, in the age of AI, there are some leaders who are just ready to go. Paul Adams is one of them. He is all in on AI. He says it's a meteor that's coming. And given the fact that his company, Intercom, is in the customer service business, and that was essentially at the top of the list in terms of what OpenAI said was going to be disrupted immediately, they went immediately into offense because they had been investing already in AI and ML, and they transformed their whole business around a new artificial intelligence product called Fin. So they just jumped in and they went on offense. And what offense means is that you take investment that you've been putting into the incubation zone, and then you move the people and the money into the transformation zone, and everybody else is subordinate to making this big transformation happen, and everybody gets on board. And if you need to transform because of the fact that you're in a company that is being disrupted, then you need to do what's called zone defense. Zone defense is basically where you're under attack, but you aren't ready to change. You're not willing to fully adjust. So what you do is you take what you can out of the incubation zone and you subordinate the productivity zone, because everybody's just going to try to stabilize whatever they have to do in terms of developing the new business. And essentially, that you can't fix the performance zone. So you basically have to decide who's staying and who's leaving in terms of getting everyone on board to go through a transformation that is basically the only way that you're going to survive. And this kind of play is necessary if you have found yourself being disrupted and now you need to play effectively defense. But again, most companies aren't willing to do this, especially not right away. And what we see, especially when it comes to AI, is that many companies aren't doing it. So most companies are in this position where they're not really ready, but they need to do something. So there are other options to responding to an emerging threat of disruption. You don't have to necessarily go through a business model change. You could also go through an operating model or an infrastructure model change, because the business model change is where all the demons are and everybody basically either barely survives or they leave. So instead of going through all that, why don't we focus on where we are, where we can easily make a direct impact? And so, given the fact that most of us here are technology people, we can recognize that we can very quickly take advantage of AI in order to make improvements that aren't necessarily going to change exactly how we operate in terms of the transformation zone, but instead are going to either enhance some existing offering that we have for our customers or make us much more effective. And I'm going to tell you that the reality is almost all of the gains that we're seeing are a little bit up here. People are touting it, but they aren't counting it as weighted. The real benefit so far, when you scan and you look through all the changes that AI has had to the major companies that are in markets that are likely to be disrupted, it's basically in a form of productivity enhancement, right? It's all in the back end. You're not going to see what they're doing with AI, and you're barely going to feel it, but they're deploying it in order to stay ahead, potentially to move up market, potentially just to defend through customer relationships. So this is the opportunity where we can also interject with product operations. And it's why I wanted to focus on this as a place for AI today, is because taking AI and deploying it not into a transformation zone, but into the productivity zone where we improve our efficiency and our effectiveness is a really great way to enhance what we're doing so that we can build better products for our customers and win. So then what is product operations? Time to answer that question. Product operations is made up of three elements, according to Melissa Perry. And I think she's done a great job of really codifying this so that it's simple and digestible. The first is that product operations is looking to make more efficient and to improve the decision-making at scale when it comes to business data and insights. This is how we collect and analyze our own internal data that impacts our strategy and informs how we're aligned. The goal here is to reduce the drudgery of having to do the reporting and the tracking and the fixing of things not being aligned with each other. So business data insights is a major opportunity to improve the lives of PMs. Secondly, facilitating interactions with customers and insights from customers is another really big opportunity. That doesn't mean becoming essentially a go-between or getting in the way. When it comes to product operations, which is a group that supports product management and develops systems that do so, the goal is to essentially grease the skids and facilitate interactions so that PMs still have direct interactions with customers. And what you're looking for is to enable better, higher quality customer research and amplify feedback across all product teams. Because if one team learns something, we want the other teams to also learn that and to be aware that we've discovered something new that matters. And then lastly, it's about ensuring that we are able to work together and deliver together with a coherent set of processes and practices that are cross-functional and really define the product operating model. So it's all about organizing and aligning. Again, this comes from Melissa Perry and Denise Tills, who did wonderful work on this book, Product Operations. And if you need to appeal to an authority, you've got plenty to choose from. Lots and lots of companies have product operations people, and Lenny thinks it's a great idea. So it's worth considering and learning more about when we're going to dive into some examples right now. So some examples that, again, this comes from Melissa Perry and Denise Tills, that show the benefits of investing in product operations. First is Fidelity Investments. They invested heavily in improving the access to user experience research, and that included training their PMs on how to do user research because there was a lot of variance in terms of the quality of the skills, the level of skills among their PMs. It also was to facilitate customer discovery. This was through having essentially a list of opt-in customer discovery participants who could then be there to provide feedback on any new ideas, be part of any beta testing, be available for surveys in order to test ideas early. And they would then facilitate easy sharing of any findings broadly across all the teams and prevent exhausting any opt-in customers that were part of that list so that they're not being tapped over and over and over again on the same day. Now, again, not to block anyone, but just to make sure that you're not draining all of your water when it comes to the well of your customer discovery program. And this is extremely effective. It made a lot of it really helped to improve their outcomes at Fidelity. And it's a really great example of how you can facilitate PMs having better, higher quality, much more expedient and faster feedback from customers without getting in their way. Another example is Athena Health. Athena Health is a company that was selling different insurance products, and one of the issues that they had is that the sales teams were selling ahead of the actual development. It's not an uncommon story that salespeople will like to offer something that's in discovery or an experiment long before it's been proven, and then puts pressure on the development teams to go ahead and deliver that thing, even if it doesn't isn't the best solution, or isn't something that's going to maintain a good overall product. And so they created a governance about how the product lifecycle would be treated and how the exchange of ideas would occur between sales and design and product. And so they were able to enforce essentially when can you talk about it and when can you promise it set of rules. Essentially, in discovery and experimentation, don't mention it. Alpha, beta, okay to discuss, but no due dates on when we can get it to them. And generally available, fair game to sell. So product operations can bring in the top cover to help ensure that the relationship between especially product and sales is kept healthy. And then lastly, a really great example is about facilitating feedback. And in this case, it would be for the planning and the strategic alignment of all teams. This company, Oscar, also in the healthcare space, had a number of different tools around customer experience, B2B. They had their own tools and a platform. Both of these were internal product teams, and they were overseen by both the CPO and the CTO. And they wanted to do annual planning on a regular basis. And the way they did this was they created a very distinct cadence of decision making around November, December, January, where inputs and decisions were essentially elaborated over those months. And it allowed for both bottom up and top down initiatives to flow into the teams, where top down initiatives would come from the company that was crossing over these different groups. And because these different groups would borrow resources from each other, there's a lot of resource conflicts that are essentially trying to work out there. But by having this process that worked for everyone in the organization, they could convene with urgency to get the right people in the room at the right time to look at the best data that we have now to make a decision, and then ensure that everyone was communicating and that the communication was useful, that people felt like they were engaged, and therefore they actually knew what was going on. And that included having good templates and making it a fun process. So, okay, if we think about it, now we have all of these different functions that we want to potentially support, and we might be able to do so with product operations. How might we ship this in terms of doing so also with AI? Well, the best way of looking at how to deploy AI into any kind of process is to look at the tasks. And so here we have a set of tasks. Again, this is Melissa Perry's list, but I'm going to enhance it a little bit here, where we're looking at kind of the three steps that we tend to go through when it comes to developing products. We define the problem, we ensure it's the right problem to solve. We then go and discover options in terms of solutions, and we're evaluating which are the best solutions. And eventually we get into optimization because we're delivering the right solution, and we're trying to figure out how to do that best. AI can help individuals in all of these areas in terms of tooling that's available now, and a lot of it general user interface tooling, but some of it a little bit more kind of low code. And you're able to immediately get benefits, especially in data analysis, but also with rapid prototyping, usability testing, uses metrics, beta testing, goal setting, iteration, and UX design. Teams can get benefits in terms of having standardized personas, improving their research, getting supporting with MVP testing, and being able to run scenarios as well as simulations, as well as summarize feedback, helping with backlog prioritization based off of informed backlogs, and also looking at options for go-to-market strategies. And at scale, when we're talking about the elements that are really at more of an organization level, like competitive analysis and quantifying the opportunities, as well as scaling up how we integrate and go to market, these can also be enhanced as well. So there's a lot of opportunities to leverage AI, and I'm going to show you a couple examples because I don't want to just talk about it and wave my hands. One example is a company called Steady. Steady is a company that I had the opportunity to get to know recently, and they are all about this idea of continuous coordination. It's a very lightweight framework, and the goal of that framework is essentially to pull information from tools that you're already using and then provide context that can then show your intent, and then use AI to summarize and update and provide very digestible information about what's going on in each of the teams and how we're doing in terms of achieving our goals. So I'm going to play a little clip here about what it looks like if you were to have your tools integrated with Steady, which is enhanced with AI. And what you'll see here is that it offers you a quick fill that will go read all of your integrations and then automatically generate with links what it is that you did. And then you write in your intent. And that's really nice because an intent is something that you can commit to and also doesn't require you to get into the nitty-gritty details or to summarize them yourself. And then if you're looking at a team level or across teams, you can then gather highlights and find out who's reported in and what are they working on, and do so again. This is all generated by AI, which is pretty fantastic. And so these are two examples of how if you have a tool that is using the right lightweight process where people are expressing their intent to work on goals that are part of their OKRs, this fits really well. And it helps to keep everyone coordinated, but it's super lightweight. And then it can use AI to read all of your other work you've been doing, so you don't have to do it twice, and ingest it into this kind of light coordination framework. So that's a really simple product operations tool already enhanced with AI. But there are lots of others. So let's take a look at a number of them. And I've got a list here, and I'm hoping that some of them get you excited. So one of them is Manage Better, which offers for the business data and insights. We have, again, our focus here is about informing the strategy and showing how we're doing against our strategic goals and whether or not we're on track to meet those intents and the OKRs we set at the organizational level and anything we decompose from there. Manage Better can offer insights into that productivity and the performance by looking at performance reviews and feedback analysis. There's also a really interesting tool called Forecast.AI, which is able to take a look at the project management tools that you have and predict any delays, as well as optimize resource usage. You can imagine that Oscar would like to use that. And then Amplitude, which is a very famous analytics suite. It actually belongs in a couple categories, but I had it here because it's able to tell you immediately how you're doing in terms of segments of your business, which are oftentimes how we decompose our goals when it comes to optimizing, within the quarter and within the year for achieving revenue goals or adoption goals and growth. So to give you a quick demo, I'm going to go ahead and open up a demo here of Amplitude. I'm hoping I don't get an ad, but I probably will. We'll just let the ad play for a second.
That your team's back.
Make sure I'm sharing sound.
I'm going to walk you through my day as a product manager at Amazon Store.
Line grocer. My team's priority is to increase our number of Ample Store loyalty customers, a key aspect of our business that drives steady incremental revenue. In order to accomplish this, I need to, first, easily discover new insights at our loyalty program, including what features and user actions are helping or hurting user acquisition. Second, connect and act on these learnings by retargeting these users with personalized messaging to increase engagement. And lastly, to quickly optimize the experience for these users to increase their lifetime value. Here's how I'd go about this in Amplitude. As a first step, I lean on Ask Amplitude to help me generate a chart that tracks loyalty program signups. This eliminates the guesswork from building my first analysis and lets me get to the right insight fast. Next, I want to understand the steps that my customers typically take to become a loyalty program member. Journeys offer me a comprehensive view of what my users are actually doing in my product. I learned that the majority of my users join the loyalty program directly from our main landing page. This kind of exploratory analysis previously took me weeks, but in Amplitude, I can easily identify my customers' top journeys in order to better lead them to my key product milestones.
Good. I'll let you watch the rest of it on your own. But here's an example of a tool that does a great job of, again, summarizing key metrics that you establish within it. And you can also very quickly use its generative AI tool in order to find that starting point in order to dive into the tool appropriately. So your product operations team would be in charge of making sure that uh, that these things are set up correctly. And then as a product manager, you would go in and use them. And here immediately, AI is able to direct you very quickly to where you need to go. Another set of tools that I think are very interesting, this time more focused on customer marketing insights. So Amplitude obviously is a bit as well. One of them is Atlas.ai, which focuses on research and competitive analysis. It does real-time data on market trends and competitors, which is fantastic for understanding kind of where your parity is. Narrativa.io is another predictive analytics tool to look at behavior and identify at-risk users so that you can understand what potentially is driving that behavior. Product Board has leveraged the integration with a really good AI called Frame.ai. And Frame.ai is pretty interesting because of the fact that it's able to take sentiment analysis and combine it with generative AI assessment and use it to target where you have potential impacts to customer satisfaction and any other metric that matters to you. They're particularly good at customer satisfaction and looking at potential impacts to your reputation, but they also can, of course, do any other form of scoring like NPS or CAC, and they have statistics showing significant impact. Now that's infused into Product Board so that you can get those feedbacks, not just looking at the ticket flows and listening to the comments that you have in various channels where you get feedback from your customers, but also that data could then be piped into your planning in your roadmap so that you could then highlight which features are having the most impact or the most negative impact on your current customer experience. So it's a pretty cool integration point. And then lastly, Mixpanel offers a really nice event tracking and user retention analysis tool. And of course, it does a lot of other work and conduct A/B testing. And I have a quick demo for you of that as well. So I'm hoping we can jump to it, and I'll show you this.
Hey, I'm Maverick. I'm a PM at Mixpanel, and I'm excited to talk about Spark, Mixpanel's natural language report generation tool. Using Spark, you can ask any question just by typing it into a field and getting your answer. So let's get right into it. You access Spark through boards. So anytime you're adding content, you'll have this option to launch Spark. By default, we give you a series of default questions. So if you're not sure what to ask, this can help you get started. So in this case, I might ask what percentage of my users use Android. Spark will give it a little spin and then provide an answer. If I'm happy with this, I can go ahead and press save. If not, I can keep typing to iterate on this. So I'm going to go ahead and save this. And now let's ask our own question. So how many users are viewing products? And so Spark should generate this and say, okay, we have 48,000 instances of product viewed. Spark is smart enough to know when you are trying to ask a new question versus refining an existing question. So in this case, I might actually be interested in purchases. So how many purchases are there? It'll know that this is actually an entirely new question, so it won't add like a filter, for example. So there are 5,000 purchases. If I'm happy with this answer, I can go ahead and save this. But before that, please, give this a thumbs up. This is actually doing the right thing. Gave me the right answer. Cool. So I can submit this feedback, and this really helps us improve Spark down the line. So I'm happy with this, and now I can press save. Let's ask a more complicated question. What is my purchase funnel? And so Spark will try to figure out what our purchase funnel is. So in this case, this is our purchase funnel from sign up to purchase completed. But obviously, there's a few more steps in between here that are important. I can refine this funnel that Spark has made. So I might say add product viewed as step 2 and product added to cart as step 3. And Spark should be smart enough to figure this out and update our funnel. So yeah, it actually looks like it did the right thing. If at any time you're uncertain, you can click in and see what Spark is doing. So in this case, we can see that Spark is making a 4-step funnel just as we wanted and has some default conversion criteria. So I can go ahead and switch this. Maybe I actually only want a 1-day conversion criteria, but I can do this through Spark. Change the conversion window to 1 day. And so this should update, and I will click in just to make sure that this worked. And you can see this actually updated just as I expected.
Okay, good. So you can see how through natural language, just through talking with essentially the same tools that didn't have this about 6 to 8 months ago. I think Spark was released within the last year, about in that time frame. This is now becoming available. The question is, are you set up to use it? And do you have the right operations in place to enable your product managers in order to use it? Fantastic example of a really nice enhancement. But again, what we talked about at the very beginning, what the companies are doing is they are deploying AI limitedly into the performance zone, changing the experience. And then actually on the back end, there's a lot more happening with generative AI in terms of optimizing cyber and IT and developer capacity, et cetera. Okay, so speaking of processes and development, we have the third leg of the three-legged stool of product operations, which is about processes and practices. Once called also governance, but I think that it was politically smart to not call it that. But we are effectively getting into how do we manage and control changes at scale, because at scale we have economies of scale, but of course we trade that for some dependencies on each other. So here we need to define our product operating model, and we need to do it really effectively, but teams need also to be able to quickly identify opportunities to improve how they work with each other and to identify any issues going on in delivery. So one really cool tool is Jam GPT, which is a GPT added to Jam, which is the a tool that supports debugging, automatic debugging, and fixing. And it links into PM tool integration if you have it, so that you can have updates against any of your tickets, so you can see that you're buying down tech debt or bugs. Additionally, there's Otter.ai. It's been around for a while. Oldie but a goodie in the AI space, good natural language processing. It's been enhanced in order to provide identification of when there is new customer feedback that's discussed during meetings, that it can then be highlighted and then broadcast to the rest of the organization, so that everyone is getting clued in to updates about our customers. In addition to that, Tome provides a platform for shaping and sharing ideas, which can be really useful, especially early in the definition phase of the problems or solutions. And then lastly, Coletto acts as an assistant for managing and finding information from documents and syncing and integrating multiple tools, and does it in a big visual map. So if you are finding yourself doing a lot of organizing work, which we know from last time is something like 20% of the job, at least, of most of those individual contributors, these can really help, and they can help to share information across teams during delivery. Just because I wanted to give, a balanced demonstration here, I'm going to go ahead and show Jam GPT. This is a little bit more oriented towards developers, but imagine that you can also get this information sent back to you into your ticketing system, into your, treating your bugs or your tech debt. So we'll go ahead and bring this up as well. Pretty cool. And also probably the best demo that we'll see. And pardon the app.
We got the job.
We'll give it 3 seconds to disappear. Okay, here we go.
JamGPT, now AI can fix bugs for you. Jam is a bug capture tool that now includes an AI debugging assistant named JamGPT that wants to help you fix bugs so much faster. It's an OpenAI model fed with all the bug diagnostics like console and network errors, device information, even network speed, so that when there is a bug, JamGPT will suggest you the fix and even fix your buggy code. Awesome. So Dealing with bugs shouldn't have to be painful because an AI named JamGPT wants to fix them for you.
Short but sweet. You gotta love the modern demo. So all of these are just samples, but effectively we're seeing how AI is being deployed into product operation tools as kind of one part of the coin. The other part of the coin is how this can help you.
I'm going to show you today how you can connect your story maps with your GitHub repository. And
okay, so with that, I want to give a quick nod to building with Gen AI and agents, because the reality is that if you don't have these tools, you can still get a lot done on your own, provided that you're allowed with your access and the policies within your company to take advantage of large language models. Pick your favorite. The general large language model is really good at doing many things today, even more than it was before. It's amazing what they can do. I was recently schooled on the fact that effectively a lot of the prompt engineering that existed for 3.5 doesn't really matter in 4 not for ChatGPT 4. It also, you should ask ChatGPT or any other generative AI and general LLM how to best work with it. But what's really interesting is that if you want to go another layer deeper, you can get into what's called agentic workflows. And Andrew Yang just gave a really great presentation on agentic workflows, talking about how actually these much lighter weight, lower cost, potentially deployed at the edge agents can achieve a really high result, even when built on older generative AI technology. And so the idea is that as opposed to being a zero-shot approach to going through and solving a problem, agentic workflows are given some kind of revising step where they try to improve over time through some kind of reflex or through leveraging other parts of a of kind of a tool ecosystem. And when we look at agentic workflows on some benchmarks like the human eval that he talks about, we can see that while ChatGPT 4 does much better than 3.5 does, actually these agentic workflows that can be linked together and strung together. And again, agents are also much lower in terms of cost and processing power. They're able to actually outperform the standard ChatGPT 4 model. And the different ways in which agents can be trained and designed in order to work effectively is through reflection, which is what we saw in the very first kind of mini slide there, going back and revising the work or taking advantage of other tools and using them to revise the work. And then what is coming out is this ability to have them kind of plan out their own steps and figure out what to do, as well as coordinating with other agents that are fine-tuned. And so the future is going to be very interesting in terms of how these end up being deployed, because there are very realistic time and energy and cost constraints to using general LLMs. And before I step into waters that are too deep for me, I will just leave it at that and say I highly recommend you go and watch these. They're going to be fantastic. So now that we've talked about the product operations, we've talked about AI and adoption models of AI, the Zone to Win framework, and why so many companies are effectively doing sustaining innovations, but using AI in order to do it. How does this all play back? Well, let's take a look at our product operating model again. The product operating model is this new concept proposed by Marty Kagan and others based on the best companies do to innovate. And they want to change how you build, how you solve problems, and how you choose which problems to solve, with roots in design thinking, lean startup, and organizational strategy. But here's the thing. Marty Kagan says that product ops is dangerous. And he says it's dangerous because his fear is pretty deeply rooted in one particular issue. But he literally calls out the rise of product ops as being dangerous. And Melissa Perry's like, dangerous? What are you talking about, dangerous? And then he goes, well, okay, they're good force multipliers, but I don't like process people. And if you want to learn more, and you should know, he really doesn't like safe. He really doesn't like process people. Melissa Perry's reply to that is, well, I like to work smarter, not harder, so we can do the actual work. And the actual work being, how can we think and solve the problems? And I think that this is an important thing to identify, because does adopting the product operating model include product operations, or product ops people? And my proposal to you, obviously, given that we're this far into this presentation, is a emphatic yes, but we have to do it the right way. Again, as force multipliers, but also don't be afraid of process, because process is how we improve. But if we actually take a look at the three elements that that Marty Kagan wants to change, and we take a look at the three elements of the product ops model, they're really, really, really well aligned. In fact, changing how you build fits really well with process and practices. Just note that I moved these two so it can align up a little better. And as a quick reminder, process and practices is all about making sure that we are able to be effective and deploy at least every 2 weeks with team topologies that empower teams, and with enabling infrastructure to make this possible, which means that we're using our design thinking to allow product managers to test hypotheses and do so in collaboration with DevOps. And this is a big thing. I mean, DevOps and product ops, they work together really, really well. And in doing so, we have to still be able then to do all the other things we talked about in this series, about having an understanding of the trade-offs in terms of engineering. Because if we allow ourselves to have tightly coupled predictive designs, we will not be able to be agile. So instead, we need to isolate and absorb between teams, be a little bit inefficient so that we can be effective, and understand that if we continue to couple our systems and try to be too efficient, we'll end up in waterfall phase delivery. So the key is always then to split apart the monolith and arrive at decoupled or loosely coupled features that have their own services, so that we can have really clean topologies that allow us to build up teams. And if you look at the elements that allow teams to deliver, which include slowification, simplification, amplification, this is how do you build roadmaps, and how do you ensure that you're wiring this winning organization of team topologies. Amplification is a huge opportunity for the deployment of AI. We've already just talked about it, but also solidification as well, because we can do a lot more experiments at a lot lower cost. If we look at changing how you solve problems, well, here we're looking at the market insights, and we want to make sure that we're able to avoid the bad patterns of having product managers be mini CEOs or project managers in disguise, but instead be led by design and driven by data science. And we want to then be able to explore lots of potential solutions. So in this way, we want our core of the team, the product trio, to be able to run lots of experiments and to do this effectively. And we know that AI can help us do this. And the goal is that we want to be exploring more because the cost is lower. So we should be able to develop more options. And we should be able to think more clearly about what are the opportunities and potential solutions, and how can we run some low-cost experiments to test these and to really filter them out, especially since we're doing sustaining innovation in most cases. And then lastly, changing how you choose which problems to solve. And here, it's all about changing how you decide what problems to solve, which is a reminder that it's not a list of features. It is, nor is it sourced directly from customers, but instead what we want to do is avoid the build trap of trying to get on parity or doing only competitor analysis. We want to fill these gaps that we have in terms of strategy, in terms of the knowledge gap, the alignment gap, and the effects gap. And instead of having everyone have to provide lots of data that wastes their time, and justify actions that are not justify what it is that they're doing, because there isn't a very clear sense of what people are doing because the information is not flowing, and that we are dictating actions as opposed to allowing teams to discover what actions are going to be most effective. Instead, we want to have our teams work against big ideas that cross from tactics all the way to vision and are flowed down through OKRs and allow us to achieve our ultimate goal, which is transforming into the product model, which is now possible because we have both these frameworks, but also all of these accelerators to make the early discovery work much lower cost and much more accessible to everyone. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing. I'm going to take a few questions and see where we're at. All right. All right. You mentioned 3-part series webinar. Are the replays the first 2 parts so we can share? Yes, we'll send out everyone. Okay. There was a comment that I was echoing. All right. First question. Serena Lika said, thanks, John, for the insight. What's your experience with AI applications in idea management systems during the early stages of new product development? We actually have one of our faculty members is also working at Medtronic, where they have been using they've been starting to experiment some with using ChatGPT in order to inform their strategy as well as their idea generation. And it's actually quite effective for moving off of biases. And so the issue is the blind spots. We have lots of good ideas. Generating ideas and brainstorming is actually not something that people self-identify as being an issue. I think one of the areas where we see opportunities for improvement is that we want to make sure that ideas are not being highly biased, and we're missing opportunities that we should be looking at. So again, that's why we want to really make sure that we're being data-driven and very clear about our experiments that we run and not moving the target. But also we want to make sure that those ideas, as we're testing them and we learn which ones don't work, we share that, because that's a point of learning. So I think in both cases, AI is helping us with making sure that we are removing our biases, we're actually exploring the data, and we're actually sharing them. Next question, with Spark.ai or any other, where is the data set coming from? And are there any security risks? Data accuracy is important to make sure to make market decisions. Absolutely, that's definitely true. With Spark, with it was within Mixpanel, that data was coming out of your own internal systems that you've set up. So this is why it's so important to have the telemetry built into your product. You got to do that, and you've got to make sure that that's being built in a consistent way, and then also in a way that people trust the data. And that's something that, again, a strong product ops team will be able to help make sure is done for everyone, because everyone's going to be looking at those metrics. But it's also part of the development practices that need to be put into place when it comes to planning features. We need to also plan to make sure that features have telemetry and are reporting out so that we have real visibility into the system. So that's where it's coming from. It's tied into your own systems, usually into your data tracking systems, as well as into, thank you, as well as into your ticketing systems. Cool. If you missed any of the first webinars, we'll send it out. The presentation will be sent out. And I'll answer one more question here. How do companies handle intellectual property concerns and confidentiality with AI tools? It's my understanding that more and more we're seeing hosting internally. There are lots of solutions to that. It's very specific, but the big one is that what we were just talking about is that the use of agents also allows for you to run many things locally. They are a lot lighter There's also something called small language models that allow you to process. So it's a question of what kind of data and if it is actually intellectual property or PII or PHI, what kind of data is actually being transferred to be processed. And that is a design decision. But you can offload to the cloud things that are not identifiable and then bring them back for processing. And you can use also for tuning GPTs, et cetera. So there are many solutions there, and I recommend you look into it. But the short answer is that it really depends on the solution and the industry you're working in. All right. I see that we're just now at time, and there are plenty of explanations. I will make sure that we send out the product management operating model that we're going to send out, shifting risks left and right. If you wanted to learn more about product management itself and also what the future looks like, it will be there for you. And here today was more specifically about enabling it at scale with AI. So hopefully you enjoyed that. I do encourage you, feel free to reach out to me. This is my contact information. I'd love to talk with you, and I hope that we get a chance to see each other again at a future webinar. So thanks so much for tuning in. Thank you, everybody.